What's going on, everyone? Coach Aaron here, back in another video to help you dominate the platform. Today we're going to go over some basic attempt selection strategies so you can hit those PRs and goals on the platform. So let's get right to it. Alrighty everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Aaron Khamesi. I'm a powerlifting athlete, coach, meet director, and referee, and I make videos here on this channel to help those groups of people out with whatever knowledge I can provide. So I've made a number of videos here on this channel going over attempt selection, so I figured I'd just do another one going over some more basic attempt selection strategies and a little bit looking into how I do it using percentages. Some people will use percentages, some people may use RPE, some people may use velocity, but for like beginners, oftentimes I use percentage base, and so we're going to go on to my computer and we'll go on to Microsoft Excel and break it down a little bit. So let's get to it. All right, I got my computer pulled up here. Let's pull up Microsoft Excel and let's blow this up a little bit and we will get started. All right, so here we can see I have a few percentages already in and some numbers already in, but we'll start going through a few different examples to go over the methodology I use and then some of the flaws in it. So the first thing I like to do is work backwards. So first I try and focus on this third attempt. I want to know what the person's goal is, or if they're leaving it all in my hands, is me figuring out what their goal is, what the competition's like, what they've been hitting in training, to figure out this third attempt first, since that's the most important thing, and we want to build everything off of that third attempt. So if that third attempt is wrong, if it's something that is too heavy, and we build off the plan from that too heavy third attempt, then the second attempt and the first attempt will be too heavy. And maybe if it's too much on all three of them, maybe you bomb out. And the same thing the other way. If the third attempt is way too easy, then the second and first attempt are just gonna be way too easy. Sure, they'll go 9 for 9, but maybe you left 10, 15, 20 kilos in the tank on all three lifts. And so you left a lot out there that you could have gotten more out of with a better game plan. So first things first, I like to focus on that third attempt. What do we think the lifter is capable of on that third attempt, using their past competition, using their current training, using what their goals are for the competition, and then other things like the miss rate, which I have a previous video going over how often people miss lifts and how you can look at your meet results to see what your miss rate is like. So you can always check out that video. I'll put the card for it above and in the description below. Then once you build that third attempt, then we can start building the second and first attempt. So here what I have is we're going to input this number here at the top, and then we are going to have the percentages automatically calculated. I put a few percentages here. For first attempts, I have 88, 90, and 92%. For second attempts, I have 95 and 97. And then for third attempts, I just put in there the 100%, 101, and 102. So this 88 to 92% range is kind of where people say you should be for your opener. If you're more of a beginner, you'll be more on that 88% side. And if you're more of an experienced lifter and trying to open up heavier to see what you're capable of for that day, you're more on that 92% side. And then for second attempt, most people fall into that 95 to 98% range. You kind of want to avoid that 98 or 99 because it'll just gas you out too much and then you won't be able to hit what you want for your third attempt. And then for the third attempt, like I said, I just put in 100, 101, 102, just so we can see some ranges there as we're going through this process. So how do we pick this number at the top to calculate the percentages? So I went over a few examples. So if you know what your 1 rep max already is and you know what you're capable of, and for example, let's say it's the same thing as last competition. You hit 300 kilos in your last competition and you haven't really trained that long since then, your max hasn't really gone up, so you put in 300 in there. If your competition max is old and you are training for a long time and your maxes are going up, then you may want to use an estimated 1RM. It just depends on how accurate the calculators are out there for you or how well you can estimate your 1 rep max based on what you've been hitting in training, or maybe a training max. But again, you may want to be careful with using a training max depending on if you're weight cutting or if you're not following the commands or hitting your lifts to competition standards, those kinds of stuff. But if you have hit a competition max of 300 and then you've been training for a long time and let's say you're at 320, then you can always just put in 320. All right. Then the other way is if you have some kind of goal number in mind, where maybe the estimated 1RM doesn't exactly point to it, your competition max doesn't exactly point to it, but it's something that you think you're capable of or you want to build a plan off of, then what I would say is whatever that third attempt number is you want to hit, let's say you want to hit 325, take 2.5 kilos off of it and run the percentages off of that. So if you want your third attempt to be 325, you would put in 322.5, run the percentages off of that, so that way your PR, like this 101% over here, would then be that 325 that you're trying to go for. All right, so if we go back to the original example, 300 kilos is your competition max, and then you've been doing, let's say, a 6-week or 9-week cycle, you got another competition coming up, you just want to hit a small PR, you put it in 300, and then you can run the percentages how you want on your phone, on a calculator, whatever. I just put some in here to make it easier. So now we have these percentages that come out. So now we can look and see, okay, we know we want to hit a small PR for the third attempt. So we look at these and we can see we can hit 302.5 or we can hit 305. So we can have 2 or even 3 options in there for our third attempt. It's good to give yourself options so that if that day is going really well, you take the top option. If the day's not going well, you take the bottom option. If you happen to do 3, then you can pick between high, middle, and low, depending on how you're feeling. So you could have 3 options where 300 is your bottom option, is tying your PR. And then if it's a decent day, you go for 302.5, a 2.5 kilo PR. And if you're having a great day, then you go for 305, a 5 kilo PR. So then you have your options set for your third attempt. So then you can backtrack into your second and first attempt based on your goals. So you go back down and you see, okay, what can we do for our first and second attempt? A basic rule is you want your jump from first to second to be the same amount or greater than your jump from second to third. So as a bad example, you don't want to do 250 for your first and then 270 for your second. So you're taking a 20 kilo jump, and then 305 for your third, taking a 35 kilo jump. Because now your jump here is 20 kilos, like I said, here 35. So now you're taking a bigger jump from your second to third. The problem with this is that the second attempt, it's hard to gauge whether you're actually capable of 35 kilos, that big of a jump to a third attempt, so it's not an accurate gauge and you could be wrong oftentimes. And 2 is that weight on your back, taking that bigger weight on your back from second to third might scare you. So mentally now you're like, oh crap, the 20 kilo jump felt fine, but the 35 kilo jump now feels really heavy on my back, and you're scared. If it's a squat, you might cut your depth, that kind of stuff. So it messes you up. So you want to make sure that the jumps are equal, or the jumps are getting smaller as you're going from first to second and second to third. All right, so we could look at here and we can say, okay, we could do, let's take the middle. We could do 270 for our first. And that means if we take 285 for our second, that's 15 kilos, we can only go to 300 for our third. So what we do is, okay, let's not take the 285, let's try the 290. So if we went 270 to 290, that would be a 20 kilo jump. And then from 290, you can go all the way up to 310, which means that all these fit into that. So then what you can do is you can do 270 for your first, 290 for your second, and then 300 to 305 for your third. That way you're taking a 20 kilo jump, and then based on how that 20 kilo jump and how that 290 feels, you take your 10, 12, or 15 kilo jump for your third attempt to tie your PR, or take a 2.5 kilo or 5 kilo PR. If you like bigger jumps, or let's say you're a beginner, and we'll go into a lower number that's more manageable for a beginner, but for now I'm just using a big number, 300, to show you then the other extreme of a small number. You could take 265, and then you could do 285, so then you're taking a 20 kilo jump, and then you can still get to 305, taking a 20 kilo jump. The benefit to doing the 265, 285, 305 over the 270, 290, and then let's say 305, is that you're being more conservative on the first and second, because if you are a beginner, you're new to competition, you may not be effective at assessing what you're capable of for your third attempt going into the competition or even at the competition. So this would be a more aggressive approach, and maybe the 290 becomes really, really difficult, and then you have to take 300, and maybe the 290 gassed you out and you miss your 300. So then you're left with 290. Here, It gives you bigger jumps, more conservative first and second attempt to conserve energy and better gauge what you're capable of on the third. So if for some reason you are having a really bad day, you can not only take 300 here, but you can even take like 295 if it's a really bad day, and make sure you get 3 attempts in and get 295 in. Whereas here you might only get 2 attempts in and only get 290. So now you lost out on that 5 kilos. So that's the benefit to starting lighter, which is why a lot of people recommend for beginners, start somewhere in that 88%. Make sure you get that first lift in the competition, especially if it's the first discipline, which for most people is the squat, to make sure you start off on a good note and then be able to progress from there into your other attempts with some confidence, rather than the first attempt being a little bit difficult, then the second attempt being really difficult, and then missing your third, and then you're off to a bad start. All right, so now let's go to the other side. So instead of going to a really heavy extreme weight, let's go to a very low extreme weight. So let's say you have like a 50 kilo max. All right, so this is an issue that often happens with people that are beginners with lower maxes, especially on bench press, because bench press typically has a lower max than squat and deadlift. For maybe masters lifters like masters 3 or masters 4, they aren't hitting the same numbers they used to, or maybe they just started lifting, and so maybe they're even doing the empty bar for bench press, or 30 kilos or 50 kilos. For the lighter weight class women, oftentimes they're hitting lighter weights under 100 kilos for their bench press, and so some of these percentages start becoming difficult because now you have to take bigger jumps in order to take those 2.5 kilo jumps, since you can't take a smaller jump unless you're going for some kind of record. If the competition allows you to chip a record and go up 0.5 kilo, which for a beginner most likely is not going to happen, you have to take a 2.5 kilo jump. So now let's say your competition max was 50. Now you've been training for 9 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever, and you want to try and hit a small PR. Well, your only option is to hit 52.5. So you run your numbers off the 50 and you're trying to hit 52.5, but you see here for my percentages, 52.5 is going to be more than 103%. So that's part of the issue that I'm saying is the 2.5 kilo jumps now are becoming a much bigger percentage jump. So for someone with a 300 kilo max, they can hit a 1% or 2% PR in the competition. Whereas you, with a 50 kilo max, you cannot hit a 1% or 2% PR in a competition. You have to have gone much stronger to hit possibly like a 4 or 5% strength gains to hit that 52.5 kilos. But it is what it is, and then the competition you have to try the 52.5. So let's say you're still gonna go for the 52.5 for your third. What should we do for the first and second? You see the numbers get a little bit tricky as well with the first and second. So here you have the 47.5, but do you really want to jump from 47.5 all the way to 52.5? Now you may be taking a 8 to 10% jump from your second or third attempt, which is a very large jump, and maybe the 47.5 is a difficult number to gauge whether you have 52.5. So what happens oftentimes is a lifter will go out there, they'll do 47.5, they'll smoke it, looks like a RPE 7 or 8. So they say, okay, let's load 52.5, let's go for the PR. They take 52.5 and they can't even get off their chest because it was just such a huge percentage jump that the strength is just not there, and the 47.5 kilos, the 95%, is not a good gauge of whether they're capable of that or not. And then if you go down even further, then you see here for our 88 to 92% range, pretty much we're at 45. So then the issue then becomes, like I said, the jumps. Do you want to go 45 to 47.5 and then 47.5 to 52.5? Not necessarily, because then you're doing a 2.5 kilo jump and then a 5 kilo jump. So here's where the percentages start breaking down with these lower weights, is then you have to kind of adjust it and do it yourself. So when you get to around maybe 100, you can get a little bit better numbers, because you could possibly do, let's say 90 to 97.5, taking a 7.5 kilo jump, and then 97.5 to 102.5, taking a 5 kilo jump. So these percentages are somewhat doable for around 100 kilos and up. Obviously the 300 kilos was not an issue, but when you start going below that, then the percentages become an issue and you have to use a different strategy. So the strategy I recommend to people, especially for bench press, because you don't know how long the pause is going to be, and that's the most difficult part of the lift. So if you happen to even get a longer pause on, let's say, your third attempt compared to your second attempt because you're not used to that weight, or the referee just takes a little longer, then that can really affect your ability to hit that third attempt PR. So what I recommend is almost always just taking a 2.5 kilo down and 2.5 kilo down for whatever your goal third attempt is. So for example, if our goal is 52.5, we're gonna take 2.5 kilos down from that and 2.5 kilos down from that. And that would be it. That'd be our attempts: 47.5, 50 to tie our PR, and then 52.5 to try and go for a new PR. That basically is what you can handle as far as jumps in the absolute sense and in the percentage sense. And then you also have your PR in the bag on the second attempt. So if you're just not capable of that 5% strength gain or whatever it is for the 52.5, then you still at least match your PR and you move on to the deadlift. The other option you can do, again, if you are a beginner, you want to be more in this range and maybe the 47.5 scares you that it's only 2.5 kilos below your PR, then you drop this down another 2.5, so that now you're doing a 5 kilo jump from first to second and then a 2.5 kilo jump from second to third. So the second and third hasn't changed. You just make the first more conservative, again, to get that first one in the competition, build some momentum, have some confidence, and you can still handle that 5 kilo jump, which it is from 90% to 100%, but you're just pulling the first attempt down rather than bringing it closer to the second and third attempt. So you're just making the first more conservative. The other benefit with doing this more conservative method is that it leaves you room for those options for the second and third. Like I said, sometimes you want to give yourself 2 or 3 options for the second and or third attempt to give you room to play with for that day, depending on how you're feeling, how the commands are, all that kinds of stuff. So now what you can do is give yourself 2 options for the second attempt and give you 2 options for the third attempt. So you go and do your opener of 45 kilos. If it feels great, you jump to your PR, 50 kilos, and then once you hit that, you go 52.5. Obviously, if you don't hit that, then you just repeat it. But if you do the 45 kilos and it's difficult and you don't feel good that day, maybe this is bench press and squat didn't go well either, so you're kind of seeing a trend, then you have room to take 47.5 kilos to take a smaller jump, and then 50 kilos to tie your PR, go 3 for 3, get the 50 kilos, call it a day, move on to deadlift. So this method gives you a little bit of room to work with to be more conservative if you need to, and then go the regular route if you're feeling well, or you can just stick with the regular 2.5 kilo jump, 2.5 kilo jump, try and get that PR, call it a day, move on to deadlift. All right, so hopefully that helped you out, some little tips with attempt selection strategy. Again, I like to base it off of picking that goal, that third attempt first, making sure it's accurate, but figuring out what you're capable of or what you want to hit that day. And then once you have that third attempt in mind, then you can build the first and second attempt off of that third attempt. And in general, if you're going off of percentages, whatever number you're running off of, the first attempt will be between 88 and 92%. The more of a beginner you are, especially if it's your first meet, you'll be closer to that 88 to 90%. The more of it you have a few meets in, you're a little bit more experienced, you'll be in that 90 to 92% range. Second attempt, usually somewhere between that 95 to 97% range to be a stepping stone to that third attempt. You don't want to be too heavy, 98, 99, because it's going to take too much energy out of you. And you don't want it to be too low, 93 to 94, because then it's not going to give you a good gauge of what you're capable of for your third attempt. And then if you have a lower max, like below that 100 kilo range, then the numbers, the percentages start getting a little bit tricky on you, and you may have to switch to other methodology of just doing 2.5 kilo jumps. So like in the example, 47.5, 50, 52.5. Or if you are scared and you want to make that opener more conservative, drop that down another 2.5 kilos. So you're doing a 5 kilo jump and then a 2 kilo jump. All right, if you have any more questions about attempt selection, about this specific situation, these couple methodologies I went over, then you can always comment those below and I answer all my comments. You can also go check out the other videos I have on attempt selection strategy. So I have the one going over some of the data analysis done over on Reddit and what can we learn from that data analysis on how often lifters miss each of the attempts. I also have an advanced attempt selection strategy video where I go over a specific situation at a world championship, going over the final deadlift attempts and what we did to make sure that we win. We also have a Squats and Science coaching podcast, and we have an episode there on attempt selection, so you can go watch that if you want to listen to a longer format attempt selection strategy episode. But other than that, make sure to do that YouTube stuff, like the video, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Share it with a friend if they got their first competition coming up or they're worried about what kind of attempts to take. Hope you're having a good day, and I'll see you guys next time.